This is Unit 12, Lesson 1, completing the square to find the vertex of a quadratic. After this lesson, you will be able to complete the square to write a quadratic in vertex form, identify the vertex of a quadratic. So the first thing we want to remind ourselves is that a quadratic is an expression with a degree of 2. So remember, degree means highest exponent, so we're talking highest exponent is squared. Standard form we know as ax squared plus bx plus c. Vertex form is parentheses x minus h parentheses squared plus k. The reason this is known as vertex form is because the vertex can be found by doing the opposite of h and keeping k. And that would be the vertex of your quadratic. We're going to take a look at example 1. Identify the vertex of a quadratic in vertex form. So again, we know it's in vertex form because we see the parentheses and the squared. We know the vertex is h, but here it's negative, so I've got to do the opposite sign, and then I keep my k. So my vertex is going to be, again, opposite of h. Your x always lies to you, so I'm going to put positive 2. And then your k, which is telling the truth, so I'm going to leave it as positive 3. So there you have it. Your vertex is 2, 3. Pause the video now as you try example 2. Press play to go over your vertex. Vertex opposite of h, which would be negative 5 and positive 1. Pause the video now as you try example 3. Press play to go over your answer. Vertex at negative 7, negative 8. Pause the video now as you try example 4. Press play to go over your answer. So this one might have been extra tricky, but your vertex is going to come out to be positive 2. We know that because our h is what's hanging out inside the parentheses. Now k is outside the parentheses. When there's nothing outside, we know that it's 0. So your vertex is at the point positive 2, 0. Pause the video now as you try example 5. Press play to go over your answer. So again, this might have been extra tricky. On this one, notice how there's no parentheses, which means that my h value must have been 0. So h is 0 and k is negative 10. Now that we understand how to find the vertex from vertex form, we need to find out how to create vertex form when a quadratic is given in standard form. The very first thing we need to do is set the quadratic equal to 0. That means we need to move the constant to the right side. Then we're going to divide the second term, that's the b term, by 2 and square the result. We are going to add that number we just got to both sides of the equation. We are going to simplify both sides and finish by moving the constant back to the left side of the equation. Let's take a look at this in action. On example 1, we have the quadratic in standard form, x squared plus 6x minus 7. Well, the first thing I need to do is equal it to 0. So x squared plus 6x minus 7 equals 0. Then I'm going to move the constant to the right side. The constant is the number without a variable, which in this case is negative 7. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. That gives me x squared plus 6x equals positive 7. For the second step, we are going to go ahead and divide the second term by 2. Our second term is 6x. So I'm going to go ahead and do 6 divided by 2, which is going to give me 3. I'm then going to square the result. 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. Now that I know my second step tells me 9 is that magical number, step 3 says add the number to both sides. So I know that I originally have x squared plus 6x on the left, and I have equals 7 on the right. I am going to add that 9 to both sides of the equation. Now that I am adding 9 to both sides of the equation, I'm going to simplify. This side right here can be factored. When I factor it, I get the factors of x plus 3 and x plus 3. Since they're the same, they can be written as x plus 3 squared. This is what you get when you complete the square. So don't forget, that's the whole purpose of what we have. So what you have up here, you'll notice, is always going to be this guy divided by 2, which is 3, square it, and that'll give you the third term. Whenever that happens, you can factor it into the middle guy divided by 2, which gives you 3, and a squared on the outside. Now, if I simplify this side, 7 plus 9 gives me 16. So right now, simplified, I have on the left, x plus 3 squared, and on the right equals 16. My last step is to go ahead and move that 16 to the opposite side. It's positive, so I'm going to subtract it, and that gives me x plus 3 squared minus 16 equals 0. Now I'm going to identify my vertex, which is going to be opposite, same. And there's my vertex of my quadratic. Pause the video now as you try step number 1. Press play to go over step number 1. So step number 1 says I should equal it to 0 and then move the constant term to the opposite side. That's going to give me x squared plus 8x equals 3. That's step number 1. Pause the video now as you try step number 2. Press play to go over your answer. Step number 2 says divide the second term. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 2, and that's going to give me 4. I'm then going to take that 4, and I'm going to square what I got, which is 16. That's step number 2. Pause the video now as you try step number 3. Press play to go over your answer. Step number 3 says I should add it to both sides. So I'm going to add 16 to the left and to the right. Pause the video now as you try step number 4. Press play to go over your answer. Step number 4, I'm simplifying both sides. I know on the right I have 3 plus 16, which is going to give me 19. On the left side, I have a quadratic. Remember, it's a completed square, which means I should get something where I have x plus something or minus something squared. If I was to factor this, I would get the factors of x plus 4 and x plus 4, which means I'm looking at x plus 4 squared. Your shortcut is just take this guy, divide them by 2. Whatever that number is what goes inside the parentheses. Pause the video now as you try step number 5. Press play to go over your answer. Step number 5 says to move the constant back to the opposite side, which gives me x plus 4 squared minus 19 equals 0. Pause the video now as you identify the vertex. Press play to go over your answer. And our vertex, -4, positive, -19. Don't fall into that trap. All right, example number 8. Pause the video now as you try steps 1, 2, and 3. Press play to go over your work. So first I'm going to set the quadratic equal to 0. Then I'm going to move the constant to the opposite side, which gives me x squared plus 10x equals negative 24. That was step number 1. Then I'm going to divide 10 by 2 and get 5. I'm going to square what I got to get 25. That's step number 2. I'm then going to add that magical number to both sides of my equation. That is step number 3. Pause the video now as you try steps 4 and 5. Press play to go over your work. So step 4, I'm simplifying. On the left side, I completed the square to get x plus 5. Remember, you can just divide this by 2. Whatever you get is going in the parentheses. And that equals negative 24 plus 25, which is positive 1. Step number 5 says, move the constant back to the left side. So I'm going to subtract 1. That's going to give me x plus 5 squared minus 1 equals 0. My vertex is going to be at negative 5, negative 1. There you go. Pause the video now as you try example 9. Press play to go over your answer. Try all the steps. You can do it. Okay, first things first, set it equal to 0. Move the constant to the opposite side. X squared minus 4x equals negative 3. Step 1, done. Then you're going to divide negative 4 by 2. That's going to give you negative 2. Negative 2 squared is going to give you positive 4. That's step number 2. Take that beautiful number, add it to both sides of the equation for step number 3. Now we're going to simplify. On the left, we completed the square. Careful here in the fact that negative 4 divided by 2 is actually negative 2. And that equals negative 3 plus 4, which is going to be positive 1. That's step number 4. And step number 5, subtract the constant to move it to the other side. X minus 2 squared minus 1 equals 0. Identify your vertex at positive 2, negative 1. The only real trick you might have had on this is that negative right there. And of course, that makes this come out positive in our vertex. And that's just because it was a minus 4x. Pause the video now as you try example 10. Press play to go over your answer. You really should be getting the process down by now. I believe in you. Okay, let's take a look. Notice this one already has step number 1 done for us. The constant is already on the opposite side. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to step number 2, which is where I take negative 6 divided by 2 to get negative 3. I'm going to take negative 3 and square it to get positive 9. Now I have x squared minus 6x equals 16. And I'm going to add that positive 9 to both sides. That's going to be simplified on the left to x minus 3 squared, again because it was a minus 6, equals 25. Subtract 25 on both sides. You're going to get x minus 3 squared minus 25 equals 0. And your vertex is positive 3, negative 25. There we go. Now, when we take a look at example 11, sometimes they're going to ask the exact same question, but in a different way. So notice this says, write x squared minus 8x plus 15 in the form of x minus p squared equals q. Well, if you notice, our vertex form is pretty similar to this. It's just a matter of they've moved k to the other side of the equal sign, and they're using p and q instead of h and k. So when we see something like this written in vertex form, we should think complete the square. So we're going to take x squared minus 8x plus 15, and we're going to go through the same steps we've been going through. Move the constant to the opposite side. X squared minus 8x equals negative 15. We're going to divide negative 8 by 2 to get negative 4. We're going to square what we got to get positive 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. We simplify the left to x minus 4. Don't forget to divide that middle term by 2. Equals positive 1. Now, here's where we stop because this is now in the form they wanted. So this is your final answer. Pause the video now as you do the same thing for example 12. Use example 11 to guide your thinking. Press play to go over your answer. So we take x squared plus 10x minus 2 equal to 0. Add 2 to both sides. X squared plus 10x equals 2. We divide our middle term by 2 to get 5. We square it to get 25, which is what we add to both sides. Simplify the left to x plus 5 squared equals 27. And this is your final answer because that's as far as they wanted us to go when they write x minus p squared equals q. Now, when we take a look at example 13, you'll notice it looks exactly the same in the sense that they still want it in that same form, but now they're asking us, what is the value of p? So if I was to go ahead and take this, put it into that form, I would follow the exact same process we've been using. Add 91 to both sides. X squared plus 6x equals 91. Then we're going to go ahead and divide 6 by 2 to get 3. Square 3 to get 9. Add it to both sides. We are then going to complete the square on the left side to get x plus 3 squared equals 100. Now this is the form they asked us for. They're asking for the value of p. So I just have to match up. P is inside, but notice how it's negative p. So if I'm looking at the inside, the way I write it is negative p equals positive 3. Well, they asked us for the value of p. So I'm going to divide, which changes the sign, to get p equals negative 3. Pause the video now as you try example 14. Press play to go over your answer. Here we go. So we have x squared minus 8x minus 7 equals 0. We add 7 to both sides. X squared minus 8x equals 7. We know we're going to take negative 8 divided by 2 to get negative 4. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. Complete the square on the left to get x minus 4 squared equals 7 plus 16 is going to be 23. Now again, this is the form we stopped because that's what they asked us for, but now they want to know the value of p. Well, I have negative 4 and I have negative p. Negative p equals negative 4. Divide by a negative on both sides, p equals 4. And there you have it, is our last problem for this lesson. Great job. Make sure you ask your teacher if you have any questions, and have a wonderful day.